The EastSide Chapter 11. I woke up one morning to a knock on my front door. I moaned, groaned, and tried covering my head with the covers for a moment, so I would not have to wake up, but the knocking continued. I climbed out of bed and while rubbing my eyes, began to walk toward the kitchen. I thought the knocking was Teddy, but I was wrong. I opened the door to see a tall, pretty African American woman with smooth dark skin and long black hair. She was dressed in a skirt suit that showed off her athletic body. I looked her up and down. I was confused about her identity, but still admired her nice face. "Can I help you?" I asked the mystery woman through the half-open door. "Yes, I'm looking for Jahvon Smith," she said in a professional voice. "Who is looking for him?" I asked suspiciously. She pulled out her badge and identification card and raised them high so I could get a good visual. "My name is Detective Melissa Charles, and I need to speak with him about his probation," she answered back sternly. I opened the door all the way and began to lean against the wall with my arms crossed. "What about it?" "He has finished his community service, but he still is under probation until January, and a violation would send him to jail," she said, staring at me. "I know that. So do you always go door to door speaking to pre-probation violators?" I asked smugly. "No. I need to speak to you about something important, because if you help us, we can prevent you from going to jail." "I don't know what you are talking about." "Help you with what?" I said, confused. She pulled out a picture of Rich and I sitting together in front of his shop. "We have been watching your cousin for months. We know he is doing something, and we are getting ready to get the drop on his whole operation. We see that you have only been with him for 2 weeks. So, we are willing to give you a break, as long as you can tell us what kind of business he's in," she explained. "Where did you get that picture?" I asked, feeling violated. "Like I said, we have been watching all of you. You help us, we will drop your probation automatically," she offered. "No thanks," I said, rolling my eyes. "I don't snitch. And why should I help you?" "Listen, you little punk," she said, raising her voice. "I did not even want to go this route, but I told my aunt I would at least try and reason with you." "Your aunt?" I asked, still confused. "Mrs. Brenda Jackson, your probation officer. She said that you're a good boy, and she did not want to see you go to prison. So I told her that I would try speaking with you, but I see you're a lost cause." "Listen, lady, I don't know who you are, and I don't care. I'm not helping you, and I'm not violating my probation, so you can go get another guinea pig to play with," I said with a nasty attitude. "Fine, but when we bring your drug-selling cousin down, you're going along for the ride," she said, pointing her finger at me. "And don't say I did not try to help you." "What is your name again?" I asked, looking at her suspiciously. "Detective Charles." "Okay, detective. Thanks for the help," I said sarcastically. "Fine. Here's my card. If you change your mind," she said, handing me a small white business card. I took the card and placed it in my back pocket. I felt uneasy about the whole conversation. I quickly rushed inside to get dressed so I could go see Rich and tell him the whole situation. I hopped onto the motorcycle and rode it all the way to East Harbor, picking up speed as I entered the complex. I rode onto the garage driveway and parked the bike inside the garage. "Juice! Juice!" I called out as I removed my helmet. Rich walked out of his office in a tight white tank top. He was eating a bowl of soup. I could see him blowing off the heat before he took a sip. Then he answered back to me. What? Man, you won't believe what happened to me this morning. What? He inquired. A cop came to my place, I answered. A cop? He said as his face became interested and concerned. He put the bowl on his table and came back out of the door to speak to me. What cop? I don't know, some lady cop. She said her name was Detective Charles, I explained. Oh, he said with a grin. She said she had pictures of us and everything, I said, still concerned. Rich placed his arms around my shoulder and walked with me toward the outside of the garage. Don't worry about her, cousin. She just has too much time on her hands. She's been trying to catch me on something since I was in juvenile. She ain't got shit. No evidence except some pictures of me doing absolutely nothing. I think she got the hots for me, to be honest, he said, then began to laugh. I'm untouchable, cuzzo. Are you sure? Everything's good? Positive. As sure as I am black. Oh, look at our friends now, Juice said, referring to the large gray van that drove past the garage. Let's go say hi. What? I asked, looking at him in disbelief. You're joking. Nope. Let's go for a walk, cousin, Juice said smugly, walking down the driveway with his hands in his pocket. I followed him reluctantly, wondering how this would end. We walked up the street for a few blocks and saw the van parked outside an abandoned home on the side of the street. Juice began to walk up to the van with great confidence as I walked behind him several steps away. I watched in disbelief as he ran up to the driver's side window and knocked on it. The man and woman sitting inside lifted off their seats, startled by the random knock. Juice began to place his hands on his knees, laughing hysterically at their reaction. I thought police were supposed to be brave. He said, smacking his knee, still laughing. A Caucasian man and the black woman from earlier stepped out of the van and approached Juice in tandem. Juice raised himself up and began to lean against the van while lighting up a cigarette he removed from his pocket, still chuckling to himself. I don't see anything funny. Do you, Melissa? Sternly stated the tall Caucasian man in a light gray suit and black tie. He placed his hands on his waist. No, I do not see anything funny, Detective Roberts, said the pretty woman while crossing her arms. Then you two don't know comedy. Juice said, blowing the smoke into the air, leaning his right foot against the van. I should bring you in right now, Detective Charles said angrily. If you coulda, you woulda, Juice said smugly, blowing smoke into the woman's face. But I must say, Detective Charles, you are looking beautiful as ever. We really have to stop meeting this way. I'm thinking more like dinner, some wine. It'll be my treat. Just wear something sexy. How dare you speak, she said, upset. This way, you can take a picture of me up close, instead of from a distance, Juice interrupted immediately. What do you do all those pictures anyway? Do you have like a shrine dedicated to me somewhere in your bedroom? You wish. I put your shrine next to the urinal in your cell, she snapped back quickly. Only if you promise to visit, he said in a flirtatious voice. You can even bring your handcuffs, 'cause I've been a bad, bad boy. Enough of this garbage, said the Caucasian man while grabbing Juice by his tank top and pressing him against the van. She is a rank detective in the Florida State Police Department. You will talk to her with some respect, you little punk. You have beautiful eyes, sir. Is that sky blue? Juice said sarcastically toward the man holding him up to try and get on his nerves some more. The man dropped Juice back onto the ground and removed his hands from him. You're not worth it, he said, walking away from Juice, trying to calm down. Juice began to brush his shirt and said, why you guys harassing my cousin? He's just a hired mechanic. And I told you, pigs, before that I run a legit business. I earn all my money. So you can stop taking pictures, driving around here every day, and trying to wiretap my garage. Get a fucking life. I know you're doing something. I can feel it, Detective Charles said, pointing her finger. Well, guess what? Juice said quickly before walking away from the two detectives. Even if I was doing something, there's nothing in the world you assholes can do about it. So, go fuck a donut. Mark my words, you little punk. When it's time, I'll be the one putting the handcuffs on you, said Detective Roberts, as Juice kept walking away from the van. Yeah, Juice said to himself, annoyed by their attempts to intimidate him. Yo, you're crazy, I said in shock. I was amused by his fearlessness. Please, cousin, they ain't got anything on me. My operation is clean. I told you. I'm like Enrique on the soccer field. They know it's coming, but they still can't stop the goal from happening, Juice said, patting my back as we walked back toward the garage. Once we arrived back at his garage, Rich guided me directly to his office and asked me to take a seat on his couch, but not before calling his friend Dre into the room with us. Dre locked the door behind him while Rich went behind his desk to take a seat. They both looked at me very seriously as Rich began to cross his arms over his chest and lean back into his chair. Today has been kind of crazy, right? I asked nervously while the two men stared directly at me. Detectives coming around and shit. What kind of stuff y'all into, man? That's a good question. Before I answer that, let me ask you a more important one, Rich said, looking at me unwaveringly. What did you tell them? Tell them? I asked, surprised. Nothing. I don't even know what you really do. You sure? He asked, looking at me suspiciously. You come out of nowhere for a job. You're still on probation. How I know you ain't cut a deal? What? Nah, man, we family. I wouldn't do that to you, I reassured him. He continued to stare into my eyes, trying to make his own determination by my facial expression. After a few moments had passed, he looked at his friend standing on the right of him and gave him a head nod. Dre returned a nod toward him, then pulled out a double-barrel shotgun from the back of the bookshelf and aimed it directly at me. Whoa! What the heck, man? What are you doing? I yelled out frantically, sitting upright on my seat, placing my hands in the air to indicate not to shoot. I think you're lying to me, Jay. You told him something, didn't you? Rich asked me again. Come on, Rich. I told her I don't snitch. And I don't even know anything anyway. I'm just a mechanic, man. Rich nodded his head again at his partner. Then Dre cocked back the large gun, which made a loud noise as the shells reloaded. What the fuck? I told them nothing, Juice. We're family, I pleaded. I wouldn't trust family, he said in a cold, chilling tone and gave Dre another nod. Dre shook his head left and right and aimed the gun directly at my head as I closed my eyes, trying not to view the bullets flying toward me. Suddenly, I heard a loud boom sound and let out a yell. Ah! I sat there for a moment, trying to determine where I was injured, but I realized that I felt no pain. So I slowly opened my eyes to see Juice and Dre laughing hysterically because the loud noise came from Rich slamming his hand against the desk. Dre leaned against the door, holding his stomach in amusement, as I looked at both of them, confused and irate. Rich kept pointing at me, laughing, repeating, "Look at his face!" I quickly jumped out of my seat and pointed my middle finger at Rich. "You're messed up!" I yelled as I stormed out of the room. "Wait, come back!" I could hear Juice say from inside the office, still laughing as he spoke. He hurried after me and grabbed my arm and pulled it back toward him. "Lighten up, Jahvon. You're too tense, my man. Come back into the office. There's something important that I have to run by you." "You're sick. You thought that was funny?" I asked angrily. "Yes," he yelled out, beginning to laugh again. "Fuck you," I said, turning around again to leave, but was halted by his strong grip. "Hey, it's like any team. We're just hazing the rookie. In this line of work, you have to have a good sense of humor. Don't be a pansy," he explained. I shook my head left and right at him, still upset by his actions, and said, "You're an asshole. You know that? My girls tell me that every day." "Come on," he said with a convincing smile. He patted me on my back to help me relax. "I know you did not tell them anything, because you don't know anything. You do my mechanic work, and that's it. But if you all going to be part of the team, you have to be all the way part of the team. There's no halfway with this thing. Either you in it, or you're not in it. I just got to make sure that you're in it." "I said I would work for you, so I'm in it," I said seriously. "Good," he said, nodding his head up and down. "You've got to prove it. Words fade away into the air, but actions are remembered forever. You still have that gun I gave you?" "Yeah," I said reluctantly. "Listen, Juice, I don't know if I'm ready to kill anybody just yet." Rich burst out into laughter again at my remark and yelled out, "Ha! Ha! Ah! Dre, you hear this guy?" Dre answered with a smile and a nod. Then Rich said, "Jahvon, you're real adorable, man. And I'm flattered that you would think that I would ask you to do something like that for me, but no. I need you to do something different for me." "Like what?" I questioned. "Getting your hands a little dirty, so we know that you won't dime us out under pressure. If we have as much dirt on you as you have on us, then I take it no one will be snitching on no one." "What do you want me to do?" I inquired, seriously. He smiled and guided me back to his office. Then he placed a large map of the city on his desk. "This is the East Side, where we are now. I have shops here, here, and here. I'm trying to expand and hook up some shops on the north side, but those locations are run by the Mexican body shops. I asked them nicely to let me set up shop in their humble establishment, but they didn't like the idea of a beast making money on their side of town. So it's time I send them a little message," he said, pointing his finger on the map. "Message?" I asked, concerned. "A message," he said seriously. "Now, Jay, how this works is very simple. You do exactly what I say, and everything will work out to perfection. This is what I do. Don't make your own decisions or improvise. Just do exactly what I say. Got it? Yes. Good. This is exactly what you do, he said before Dre handed him a glass liquor bottle filled halfway with clear liquid and a cloth placed inside the bottle. Over here, by North Greenland, is a bar and a pool hall that most of the Mexican shops owners go to at night to get drunk. You're going to ride there tonight with 4 of these bottles. Now listen, this is the important part. You're going to place the bottles as you go through the parking lot. First, you park the bike by the street for a smooth getaway. Then, you place a bottle by the bike. Place the second bottle in the center between the 2 parking lanes. Keep the third and fourth in your hands. Take the lighter, and once you get close to all their cars, light the sheet on fire. Once you slam the bottles against the car, they will catch on fire. Now, you want me to light their cars on fire? I asked, making sure his desires were clear. I want you to burn those bitches into the ground. Once you throw the first 2 bottles, take the one you placed in the center and throw it through the window into the bar. After that, run directly to the bike and throw the last bottle toward the bar door so they won't be able to run after you. Wow, Juice, I said, shocked by his request. This is what it is. Either you down or you not. I don't have any pussies on my team because if this ain't for you, give me my gun and my bike back so you can start walking home before it gets dark, he said forcefully. I nodded my head in agreement and asked, what time am I going? That is what I'm talking about. I knew I could count on you. See, Dre? Why can't you be more like him? He said joyfully as Dre leaned back, rolling his eyes, disrespected by the comparison, while handing me a book bag with 4 exploding bottles inside. Now, do exactly what I told you. I'm going to have you leave from Uncle Leon's house, since it is on the other side of the city, just in case the detectives are still following you. Leave around 10:45, so you can get there by 11:30. And remember, once you leave there, come straight here. They won't follow you into the neighborhood. Got it? I nodded my head. After this, it's just straight mechanic work. No more of this craziness, alright? I again nodded my head, even though I knew working for him would never be just mechanic work. I did exactly what Juice asked. I rested at my Uncle Leon's house for a few hours until 10:45 arrived. I nervously started the motorcycle and rode it directly off my uncle's property toward my assigned destination. My helmet shined as the streetlights reflected off the black and white headwear. The weather seemed cold as the strong winds passed through my jacket as I rode quickly through the night streets. I took the back way to the north side. Since I had been there many times, I knew exactly where to go. My mother's tomb was located there, at the North Chapel Cemetery. I visited her on her birthday every year. It was easy to remember since her birthday was a few days after mine. I traveled for about 35 minutes until I reached the dividing city limits, leading me into Northside territory. The north side was more undeveloped than the east and the west. The scenery was more like an old country town, where there were more trees and woods than houses. The houses were old-time plantation homes with large fields of land. The roads had more hills, and the markets were few and far between. I rode the motorcycle all the way up to the bar that Juice described to me, and parked it directly in front by the road just like he ordered. The North Greenland Tavern. To the sign, sitting directly on top of the bar doors. I could hear the loud music and people from inside as I began to set down the bottles in the locations that Juice ordered. I crept slowly through the parking lot as I set the bottles down nervously. My heart began to pump faster and faster as I slowly maneuvered through the old cars sitting in front of the bar. I took out a lighter from my pocket and took a deep breath as I began to doubt my actions while wondering if I was doing the right thing. But I knew that this would be the only way to gain Juice's trust, so I placed the fire from the lighter onto the sheets hanging from the bottles. "Here goes nothing," I whispered to myself as I took the first bottle and slammed it against the cars to the left of me. I quickly grabbed the second bottle and threw it at the cars on the right side of me. I began to run toward the bike as I picked up the third bottle and quickly threw it right through the bar window. But already a few men began to run out of the bar to see what the loud noises were. One of the Mexican men in a leather jacket pointed at me as the rest of them began yelling and running toward me, irate. I couldn't make out what they were saying from the loss of hearing from the loud crashing noise of the exploding bottles and the fear taking over my body. I grabbed the last bottle by the bike and threw it toward them to slow down the angry mob. It looked like about 30 people were running out of the bar, trying to chase me down. I started the motorcycle and began to ride away as they started throwing knives and other blunt objects toward me. Fortunately for me, I was a good rider, so I dodged all of their attempts to hit me. I let out a sigh of relief as I began to ride down the road away from the bar until all of a sudden I heard motorcycles coming toward me in rapid speed from the direction of the bar. I looked through the rearview mirror and saw 8 of the Mexican men from the bar riding on choppers toward me, holding onto bats and chains. "Oh shit!" I exclaimed as the lights of the 8 motorcycles began to catch up with me. I attempted to pull back the throttle as hard as I could to gain more speed, but their bikes were still getting closer. One of the men threw a large rope chain toward the wheel of my bike to try and stop me, but luckily he missed by my quick maneuvering. The streets were completely dark, and the only light that shined was a crescent moon and the lights from our motorcycles. I took a quick right down a steep hill road and read the sign as I turned, which read Parker Street. I realized that I was close to the North Chapel Cemetery and had an idea. I figured I could try and lose the vigilantes chasing me at the graveyard. I knew a shortcut that I would take as a kid and quickly turned left onto a dirt road. The road had many holes because of the construction being done, but I remembered where they all were, so I maneuvered through them carefully. I could hear one of the men on his motorcycle fall directly into one of the holes, flipping his bike over. The rest of the men began to slow down their motorcycles so they wouldn't share the same fate as their friend. I still rode quickly through the roads and ended up right behind the cemetery. I rode hastily around the graveyard as it was a big circle in the middle of town. I rode until I saw a large group of trees and bushes to hide behind. So I hurried and turned off my bike and walked it behind the large bushes. I began to hear the men chasing me as their loud bikes roared through the silent air. So I hurried to the cemetery gates and climbed over the fence and landed in some bushes on the other side. "Do you see him?" I heard one of them say. "Nada," answered the other. "Where did he go?" said another. They rode around the outside of the graveyard for a moment, as I could see the lights on their bikes shining through the bushes while they began to look around. They searched for me, but with no luck. "He probably went this way, down the street. Let's ride," one of them said, as they all began to yell out, revving their engines and riding away. I let out a deep sigh of relief as I watched their bikes ride down the road. I stood up from the bushes and started to look at the large cloud of smoke from a distance. I wondered if that was for my doing. Then I suddenly saw a ladder going toward the roof of the chapel, so I climbed to the top. I gazed in awe at the large fire that I had created and the large cloud of smoke climbing toward the heavens. The loud sirens of the fire trucks and police cars came thundering down the street as I watched them drive by. I felt guilty about what I had just done. I suddenly saw two motorcycles drive by the chapel again, so I ducked down on the roof. But they did not look up toward my direction, just on the ground, trying to find me or my bike. I realized that I would have to wait in the cemetery for a while until it was safe enough to return to the east side. I climbed down from the roof, still feeling ashamed about the destruction that I had just caused for a bunch of people that I did not know. I sat on the grass, leaned my back against the chapel for a moment, and rethought about everything that had been happening to me lately and wondered if Pops was right about Juice, that working for him would just end up being nothing but trouble and cause me to lose my ethics or sell my soul. I was starting to have an internal conflict with myself at that moment, wondering why all these things were happening to me and why I couldn't just be happy. I slowly lifted myself to my feet while brushing off my clothes and began to walk down the silent path of tombs and dead bodies, slowly shivering from the cold breeze flowing through the creepy graveyard. Through the darkness of the night, I was still able to find my way because of all the many times I visited this gloomy place. I kept walking for a few feet until I reached a large concrete tomb that read, Gloria Smith. I stared at the grave for a moment, but my concentration was interrupted by a large thundering sound and little drops of rain. I looked into the night sky and watched the gigantic clouds get darker. They covered the moon that dimly glowed. Frustrated, I placed my head against a hard tomb and started to become completely overwhelmed by my mother's grave in front of me, which always happened every time I visited her final resting place. I loved my mom with all my heart, and her passing had left a crack in it, which never healed properly. My dad was always away working, so I would spend days in her bakery while she worked. We would play games like hide and go seek when the store was slow, and I would help work the register when the store was packed. She used to tell me stories about the civil rights movement that used to go on in Florida, and I would tell her about the girl I had a crush on in school. It was like she was my best friend. Pops came in later on to help out with me, but she said she would always be there for me, and I believed her. She had cancer for a few years before that dreadful morning, as I woke up abruptly from a sleep from a bad feeling I had in the pit of my stomach. I rushed to the door and saw my dad rushing out of the house. I called Pops to take me to the hospital and hurried to her bedroom when the doctor called it. I just remember screaming with my hands pressed against the glass window, looking into her room. I couldn't breathe for a moment while Pops tried to console me, as my father prayed by her bedside. We later walked over to the nursery in the hospital to see Lily. She was a premature born baby, and she was lying on her back, crying. My mother died before seeing the life she had created. They had removed Lily from her to tend to my mom's dying body. I don't know what I'm doing anymore, Mom. You told me that you'd always be here to guide me, but you lied. You're not here. You're not here! I exclaimed as I started to feel a tear fall down my cheek. Where are you now when I need you the most, huh? Where are you? First you, then Shantae, now Janelle. I just don't understand. Why do people keep leaving me? Dad is always drinking. Doesn't say two words to me unless he's ordering me around to do something. I miss you. The rain began to pick up speed and volume, which made the night air very cold as my body began to shiver. I stood there in front of her grave, wiping the tears in my eyes. I left Pop's shop, and now I'm working for Cousin Rich. And I don't know if that was the right move, I said, pulling out the gun from inside my jeans. He gave me this, and I don't know what I'm going to do with it. But that is what scares me. I don't know if I wanted the gun to use it on my enemies or on myself. Maybe I should just use it on myself and come join you, Mom. I slowly placed the gun to the temple of my head and breathed in slowly, contemplating if I should pull the trigger. You're the only one I knew that always told me the truth and loved me as much as I loved you. Dad hates me. Pops tries, but he does not love me like you did. I feel so alone without you. I don't want to be without you anymore, I said to the tune as my fingers started to squeeze the trigger, but was quickly interrupted by a violent strike of lightning crashing down on the chapel behind me. The strong lightning startled me and made me drop the gun into the saturated mud. I quickly picked it up and placed it back into my jeans, breathing heavily from the surprise event. I looked back at my mom's grave for a moment and placed a soft kiss on the tomb and said, I love you, Mom, and I miss you all my heart. I'm sorry that I didn't do much in my life to make you proud, but I hope one day I will. I ran back toward the chapel as the rain began to crash down over my head. The chapel doors were locked, so I found a little corner next to the door that had a slight roof on top of it to help cover me from the fierce rain. I sat there shivering, trying to warm myself with my drenched jacket, but I was still cold as my bottom lip began to quiver. I placed my head against the door and stared at the horrible weather until my eyes became too heavy to resist from closing. My long yawn made no sound as the drops hitting the ground were the last things I heard before I fell into a deep sleep while leaning against the cold concrete